Okay, this is a little thing we call the Middlekauff Mailbag. Subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this and you want to get in on that Middlekauff Mailbag, you just slide into my DMs. Instagram at John Middlekauff. Fire in them. Very, very easy to do. We like interacting with the people here. From Jackson. I know you have said there is no chance Rodgers comes back this season, but since he is now practicing, do you think he comes back? They open the window. There's a difference between open the window and fully participating in practice. Just because a window opens doesn't mean you automatically practice. I think we all have to acknowledge, what are we doing? If I'm the Jets, I'm sorry, this season is down the drain. Your team stinks with your quarterback situation. I mean, really does. You just played a guy, Tim Boyle, who, if you ever have to go like, we're sticking with Tim Boyle, your team's in shambles. No offense, Tim Boyle. I mean, incredible accomplishment to make it to the NFL, but you're not a starting quarterback. Just like Zach Wilson, not a starting quarterback. There's nothing you can do. So I think bringing him back, one, is insanity. Two, is just moronic. Part of being good at business is balancing short and big picture stuff, right? Everyone listening to this, no matter what you do, whether you sell cars, sell insurance, run a bakery, there's a balance of short-term profits and what will lead to big picture, success with your customers, right? And sometimes you got to take less money at the beginning. Sometimes you got to lose money in the grand scheme of things. Like, you kind of just got, the moment he went down, you just got to take it on the chin. To even allow him to practice, I think is borderline crazy. What if he re-injures it? I remember when I was with the Eagles, Jason Peters tore his Achilles. And I think he was at home on the scooter and like fell or something happened and he re-tore it. Like, how could you even risk another injury? Like, let's just get you fully healthy. Say this about the Cardinals and Kyler Murray situation. They waited. They let him get back. He had been 9, 10, whatever, however many months out. And then they eased him in. Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles September 11th. It's November 29th. What the fuck are we doing? I'm not even a doctor. I've never even torn a knee or an Achilles. And I know that's insane. Because there's nothing on the line. Like, it just doesn't add up. I don't see how it makes any sense. From Calvin. Love your takes. I already like this guy. I'm a diehard Charger fan, product of being born in San Diego. Never turned my back on them. You already know, and have mentioned before the state of the organization. What do you think the Chargers need to do to change the current narrative of the choking, chargering Chargers? Well, I think it starts with paying for a real coach. And listen, it's sports. You're going to lose some heartbreaking games, right? Think of guys that have not won a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan, that are viewed as good coaches, right? Jim Harbaugh, Kirby Smart for a long time before he won the national championship. You lose some gut punch games. But if we all view you as a good coach, it's like, yeah, he's gonna figure it out. Like, if you're betting on Harbaugh, he might not win it this year, but I would bet on Jim Harbaugh winning a championship, whether that's a national championship, whether that's when he comes back to the Super Bowl. Why? He's good. And when you're good and you're always in the mix, eventually things are going to go right. What happened to Andy Reid? He was good for a long time. Couldn't win a Super Bowl. Well, Donovan McNabb, good player, Pro Bowl level guy. Michael Vick had a year for him. Alex Smith, not as good as Donovan, but just solid starter, gets you the playoffs. Then he gets his Tom Brady. Rest is history. He's been to 3 Super Bowls, 5 years, won a couple of them. Might be back in it again this year. Might be in his 4th Super Bowl in 5 years. Right? That's what happens. So I think it's the coach. I really think it's that simple. You get a coach that knows what they're doing. I have faith that you won't be the Chargers anymore. Or Chargering, as you guys call it. I'm a Lions fan. And it has been an embarrassment of a franchise my entire life. But since Sheila Hamp took over and she made smart moves, fired Patricia and Quinn, and hired Brad Holmes, do you think the Lions are turning into a well-organized franchise that can win a playoff game? Or two, in a year, we will be the pit of mediocrity until we get a better quarterback. I like Goff, but he clearly can't handle pressure, and any playoff team will have a good enough pass rush to disrupt him. Well, if Goff can win you a playoff game, you guys haven't won a playoff game in a long, long time. I think it's several decades, right? Like, I don't think you've won a playoff game since the 80s. You definitely haven't won one is 91 the last year you won a playoff game? Definitely not in my lifetime that I can remember. And I could be wrong on that 91 number. I don't know why I'm throwing that out there, but here's the key to be a good organization, right? And a successful owner. Hire the right people and let them cook. Robert Kraft owned the Patriots. The Patriots were viewed as not a top 15 brand in the NFL. They had a moment with Parcells in the 90s, but I would say historically, they were a joke too. Hires Belichick, lets him go to work. Obviously, they got a little lucky finding Brady in the 6th round or whatever, but then he just let him cook for 20 years. Clark Hunt hired Andy Reid, has let him cook now for a decade. And Jeffrey Lurie, smartest thing he ever did, get Chip Kelly out of the building, let Howie run it. When you hire good people in a business that's kind of unique, you can't impact it as an owner. All you can do is cut the checks and support them and give them thumbs up when they want to do something. Now, the character stuff, I always say I have no problem if you have some non-negotiables, hitting women, any violent offenses. Totally get that. I would have no problem. I don't know where I would fall if they said, John, you're worth $50 billion. The next team that comes for sale, the NFL is going to sell it to you for $8 billion. But okay, I'll take it. Where would I fall on the morality of character stuff? I probably have a little more Al Davis and Jerry Jones because I like to win. But I'm a big high character guy. I don't know. That'd be, who knows, until I was in the firing line and had to make the decision. But when it comes to like, should we make this trade up to the 2nd round or trade down from the 2nd for next year's 1 or whatever, you should never get involved in that. Because if you are, then you got the wrong people. And I think what they did with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell is they hired 2 very capable guys. Now, are they going to be like all-time great guys? I don't know. Time will tell. Because they're going to have to make another move at quarterback in the next couple of years, you'd think, unless Hendon Hooker turns out to be some star. But I think their key is just let them go. And you know why a lot of owners fail? Like, most owners aren't Dan Snyder and Dave Tepper. A lot of owners just can't hire the right guys. I really think it's as simple as that. When you hire the right people, like, it's a game changer. How much did you hear guys in the NFL doing steroids? I'm sure guys like Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa may be using them. I've never heard of it. Obviously, those guys, I think they're one thing when you get to the NFL, even I saw this in college. There are certain people that are genetic freaks. There are certain people that are like, we're the same human species here. Like Ryan Matthews, the running back that played for the Chargers and then the Eagles. He was so fucking jacked. Dude grew up homeless. He barely had food to eat. God created that man differently than everyone else. I saw it with my own eyes. I was like, this guy, there are levels of genetics like Shaquille O'Neal's. I mean, some of these people at the highest level of sports are built different. Now, obviously, people use PEDs, right? People are using them in baseball. People are using them in baseball, and people are using them in football. But I think you'd be surprised how often some of these guys, like, the Trent Williams of the world, I mean, they're just Jason Peters. Some guys just are different. They really are. That's why there's such a small percentage of these people that are at the highest level. Logically, why can't Stroud be considered the MVP? Is there a player who not only puts up huge stats, but also is vital to his team? When we talk valuable, in all quotes, who's more valuable than Stroud and Mahomes? Dak, Purdy, Tua, etc. are playing awesome, but look at the cards they're dealt compared to CJ. With Hurts, the value he holds not only as a player, but for real morale and leadership is immense. But the stats are I do think the stats on Hurts, one thing we overlook, because I get this a lot with Hurts and Purdy, It's like their stats are kind of identical as passers. Purdy has less picks and right around the same touchdowns. Jalen also has 11 rushing touchdowns. He has 400 yards rushing. So if he throws 28 touchdowns, which is not, typical MVP type quarterback, if he gives you 17 on the ground, I mean, we're talking 45 touchdowns accounted for. You'd be like, well, half of them are the tush push. Well, he's part of the tush push. Like that play, a huge part of the reason it exists is fucking him. So to me, if he has a big game and beats the Niners, like I think he's going to trend toward winning it. I really, how often does a guy on like a 15-2 team that accounts for 40 plus touchdowns not win the MVP? But I hear you. I just think it's fair not the rookie's not winning it. Love the show. Been listening for a few years. Saw a mock draft where Penix goes to the Vikings in the 20s. Obviously, they will probably end up in the mid-teens. Would this be possible, or is quarterback inflation moving Penix up, and would this be a good pick for the Vikings? I think the hard part about Penix is when you look at all the top quarterbacks, Caleb, very athletic, moves around. Great movement. Drake May, really good athlete. Bo Nix, fantastic athlete. Jaden Daniels, elite athlete. All these guys, movement is a big part of their game. You watch Penix play, and I've watched him play a lot of games the last couple of years. He's kind of a throwback pocket passer. He's like a bigger Tua. Really, Tua's not mobile. Tua's a pocket player. That's Penix. Which, let's face it, in 2023 and beyond, like you want mobility. Part of why CJ looks really good is like, God, CJ's pretty mobile. He's a good playmaker. Penix is a between the tackles pass guy. So there's a risk there. I love him as a college player, but I understand the question marks. Can you have a guy that's not that mobile in this modern game? Offensive linemen have never been worse. There's never been more pass rushers. Kind of a sitting duck. Now, you'd say, well, the greatest players of all time were all non-mobile guys, right? Montana was a good athlete, but he was a pocket passer. Brady, Manning, pocket guys. Marino, pocket guys. Elway, mobile. Rodgers, mobile. I always lean mobile. Have a question about the Birds. If the Eagles were to win the next 3 games against the Niners, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks, their 1 seed would be pretty much clinched. Agreed. Honestly, they win the next 2 games, the Cowboys and the Niners, it's a wrap. I'd argue they win this week, it's probably over. The 1 seed, if that happens, do you think they would, for the next 3 games, try to rest Jalen? I think they would 100% rest Jalen in a meaningless game. Whether that's the last game of the season, whether that's, they rest him like the second to last game of the season and then let him play the following week because they're going to get a bye. 100%. You would, like, they're not chasing undefeated, all-time great status as a team now. That 1 loss actually makes it easier to do stuff like that. So, yes, if they clinch the 1 seed very early, I could definitely see them doing something, and they should, right? If it's possible to take care of them. Okay, this is Coach K, not Mike Krzyzewski, but just another Coach K, who is he's got a lot of views on YouTube, he says. Okay, Coach K, love the show and love the communication with the listeners. I believe if the Bears have the number 1 pick, they should draft Marvin Harrison. Fields has shown he can excel when they just let him play and not call 15 screens or take the ball out of his hands like they did in Detroit, Denver, and many other games. Fields may have a fumbling problem, but Caleb leads the league or the country in fumbles. He plays backyard football. For me, he's not a can't miss. Plus, I don't think his attitude would translate well to losing. Get to the best player in the draft, roll it back with Fields, and worst case scenario, you bring in a rookie who gets Marvin Harrison, DJ Moore, and maybe Mooney, and a better overall team around him. Build the team up the way the Lions did. P.S. Check, Caleb isn't number 1 in fumbles, but he's up there with 9. Justin Fields is not going to be your quarterback next year. Eberflus is not going to be your coach. It's over. Like, it's just, we can argue it till we're blue in the face. Part of what the Lions did is Jared Goff had proven that you could win with him. He proven that he could be a capable quarterback in the pocket as a passer if you had a good team. Justin Fields, if you just watch him, you're right. He can make some plays when you quote unquote let it fly, when he's running around. When he's in the pocket, even if there is time, he definitely holds on to the ball too long. And listen, I disagreed. Now, he was proven right. One of the reasons the 49ers, and when I say the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, did not consider him when they traded up to 3, because he did not think he saw the field and didn't think process holding on to the ball is a major problem. Now, it turns out so did Trey, but when you watch Purdy, he gets rid of the ball fast. Part of processing quick is like, can you, like Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, all the top guys, if they have to, can you get rid of the ball quickly? Can you see everything and boom, get rid of it? That is not Fields. Now, is his team kind of suck? Offensive coordinator? For sure. We can argue that till we're blue in the face. I love Justin Fields coming out of college. I thought Trevor Lawrence should be 1. He should be a closer 2 than the way we were talking. Turns out I was wrong. All those guys suck. I wouldn't want any of them. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields. Now, I would want Justin Fields over that group, but that's not saying much. So I would just take a quarterback, and I would trade Fields for, it's just time. He needs to change the scenery. It's not going to work. He's just not good enough. I don't know what else to say. And I'm not a Justin Fields hater. It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivery with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Can Uber Eats deliver foam fingers? No. But chicken fingers? Yes. Touchdown dances? No. Buttermilk ranches? Yes. Field goals? No. Grilling coals? Yes. Running backs? No. Ribs? Yes. Blitzes? No. Beers? Yes. Defense? No. Deodorant? Yes. Game-clinching turnovers? No. But pastry turnovers? You know the kind with delicious apple filling? Oh yeah, because that's groceries. And get those delivered with Uber Eats too, along with food from your favorite restaurants and other essentials. And the best part, you can get it all without missing a second of action on your TV. There you have it. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details. Big fan of the pod. I had a question maybe you can answer on the episode. Being a bit of a homer here, admittedly, but why are the Steelers being able to win ugly a knock on them? On the flip side, Philly's ability to sneak out wins is praised. Not trying to say we're a contender, but I believe we'll make the playoffs and give the team we play some trouble. We moved the ball fluidly on Sunday, and it looked like we have improved side of the ball. 1-4 in the red zone won't cut it. Here's the difference. I hear what you're saying. Because, like, if you're just making the argument and you hadn't watched them, like, well, they're both winning these tight games. The fuck's the difference? We're 7-4. We're going to rattle off a bunch of wins because our schedule, we're going to be like 12-5. How many teams go 12-5 every year? The difference with the Eagles is, one, they score a lot of points. So it's like, I have a lot more faith when your quarterback can account for 4 or 5 touchdowns on any given game. And you can get within 25 to 35 points with your eyes closed. You can't do that. So it's like you have to win these ugly games. That was the Browns for a while. It's like, yeah, you can win the game 17-16. The Eagles have no problem getting to 25 to 28 to 30 points. So, yeah, if I got to win a shootout, how do you win a shootout? It's impossible. So I think, plus they won playoff. They were winning in the Super Bowl. You guys haven't won a playoff game since January of 2017. It's 2023. Do you think Jay Billis standing on the table yelling about college hoopers needing to get paid has been calculated move? Has it been his way of deflecting and hiding the fact that Duke's clean-cut scholarly image is bullshit and they have paid players under the table for decades? No. I saw Matt Rule today. I think he's clearly getting peppered. Like, how do they improve, right? They went 5-7. They didn't go to a bowl, and they need a quarterback. And he's like, I just want everyone to know. Because there are going to be some quarterbacks that you're like, why didn't you get that guy? The going rate for a good quarterback, like Cam Ward right now, who reportedly has offers for $1 to $2 million from Ohio State, from Miami, Washington. Cam Ward's he's going to be an NFL player one day. The going rate for a good quarterback, a guy that like we can win with this guy, is like $1.5–2 million. And my first thought was, oh, that's what basketball players have been going for the last decade. Well, who's got most of the one and dones? It's not just Kentucky. It's not just Arizona. Duke's got a lot of them. I'm a Coach K guy. But anyone acting like the players, some college football players got fucked over the last couple decades for sure. The top, you know who's never complained ever? The elite hoopers, because they were paid a premium, and I'm all for it. Pay them cash. I had never bothered me. But the notion that these people in the media talk about these guys getting screwed, give me a break. These guys, and you know what's crazy about getting paid under the table? Maybe there's tax implications why they keep their mouth shut like the mob. Never talk about it. All these player podcasts, everyone keeps their mouth shut in hoops. Makes sense. Because to get one of the top 5 or 6 basketball players changes the landscape of your season. You get a one and done guy, leads you to the Elite 8. It's huge for your program. In football, it's not worth doing that. These like a high school quarterback, besides like Arch Manning or Trevor Lawrence, is not worth paying a lot of money to. UCLA did it with this Moore kid who was a 5-star recruit, stole him from Oregon. Does not look good. It's risky. You never know. There's been a million 5-star can't miss guys who can't play. In basketball, it usually translates. If you're a top high school guy, you know, the Anthony Davis, the Zion, I mean, you list the names, they're usually pretty freaking good and they get drafted high. These guys don't come cheap, which I'm all for. But Billis has always been like, oh my God, none of these guys are eating peanut butter and jellies. Meanwhile, they're driving their G-Wagon, you know, living luxurious they don't even have to go to class, which I'd argue class in college is pretty overrated unless you're like an engineer. Lifetime Steeler fan here. I think you're missing something. This is about the 400 yards. After watching how easy it was, all these teams and great quarterbacks to put up 400 yards passing every game, it makes us uneasy when we could not do it one time over 3 to 4 years. I think the 16 points comes from a divisional game in which, listen, I'm not saying it's not a positive, you guys didn't take a step in the positive direction. I've just never seen such a crazy reaction to yards. It's like, I would totally understand the celebration. Like, God, you know, we won 28-10, 4 touchdowns, Pickett threw a couple. Warren had a couple on the ground. We're coming. Like, all right, no doubt. It's been damn near 2 years since you had a take I disagreed with. What about Ryan Day's loss to, he put an X and then Michigan, was impressive. He lost to an assistant coach. God, I love the fire of college football. 20 million people watch this game. Props to college football. You've been this for a while. The hierarchy in sports goes right now. The NFL is the biggest by far. It's the number 1 television show in America. The number 2 is college football. And then there's a gap of everyone fighting for scraps. College football is a behemoth. He lost to an assistant coach after trying to get the game canceled. 3 straight losses to a team up north is unacceptable. You even talked about how Ohio State is pulling from one of the largest salary bases, the largest salary base. Almost beating Georgia in the college football playoffs is the pinnacle of Ryan Day's run as the head coach. Listen, if you fired him, I'd have no problem with it. I'm not one of those guys that thinks you're a bunch of village idiots for saying that. There is no doubt in my mind. What Harbaugh said is not wrong. He landed on third base. Usually to get the Ohio State job or to get a job like that, you have to prove yourself as a head coach. He clearly did not. And he inherited a program that was freaking rolling. And he's a good recruiter. But the last couple of years were an embarrassment. I just thought his team was much better. Why I gave him praise is the last 2 years, Harbaugh bent him over and made him say uncle. And he said uncle over and over, and Harbaugh didn't stop. He punked him. This year, they did not get punked. You're right. They lost to an assistant coach, which, like I said, if you wanted to run him out of town, I'm not going to be crying for him. I don't think he would get screwed. Now, I don't think, like, Chip Kelly to me is stealing from UCLA. I don't think the guy cares. I think his program's in fucking shambles. I think he's going to go to the Big Ten and get worked. Here's what I will say. Like, Ryan Day runs a real program. Like, you guys are clearly one of the better teams in the country. Michigan's just better right now. Harbaugh is better than Ryan Day. Here's the thing. In no world, like in a vacuum. Now, Ryan Day might be a nicer guy, easier to deal with, whatever. Harbaugh is better than Ryan Day 7 days a week, every fucking day of the week, 365. No one in football thinks that Ryan Day is better than Jim Harbaugh because it's a fact Jim Harbaugh is better. Look at the two resumes. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, I know he hasn't won a championship. He's got to be like the Colin Montgomery then of football right now because he's like the new Andy Reid or, whatever it is. But like Ryan Day's not better than him. He's just not. Ryan Day's not as tough as him. And when you're not a tough guy, it's hard to run a tough program. The reason Lincoln Riley's program's not tough, he's not tough. The reason Dan Lanning's program or Kirby Smart or Nick Saban, because those guys are defensive guys, they're tough guys. That's the way they think. That's the way they're wired. That's their ethos, right? It's like, why do I like talking about business? Because I like business. It interests me. I listen to more business podcasts than I do sports podcasts. I like the stock market. That gets my brain going. Defensive guys, like some people, we're all wired differently, and that shapes who we are. And as a football coach, like Harbaugh is unique because he's a quarterback. So you'd be like, God, he's for this offensive. No, Harbaugh's wired like a linebacker. Ryan Day's an offensive guy. That's who he is. He's a Chip Kelly mentee. Like, that's his style. But I gave him credit because his team could have won that game. Now, you're right. They're at the level of, like, you don't get style credit. There's no style points here. You're paid a premium to win that fucking game. And when Harbaugh's at his house and they got, a 37-year-old O-line coach rallying the troops, who, let's face it, is a pretty impressive guy. And maybe in 10 years, we look back and Sharon Moore is a better coach than Ryan Day. One day he gets big program and dominates. So that might age well. I don't think it's just a lock that ages poorly, but you didn't get embarrassed. Now, that's not the bar, but I saw someone, maybe it was Dan Dockich on my Twitter timeline today. He's like, everyone always thinks that like Bo Schembechler or Woody Hayes, like all these guys went undefeated against their rival. Like Nick Saban easily could have lost against Auburn. Nick Saban has lost against Auburn. Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler, they lost against the foe. The only guy who was undefeated was Urban Meyer. He was the only guy. And let's face it, like some of Urban's teams, it would have been harder against this version of Harbaugh. Pretty sure when he got there, right, who was Harbaugh there the whole time? Maybe he was. But he kicked Harbaugh's ass for a while, and it was embarrassing for Harbaugh. I would say this. He can't lose 4 in a row. He loses 4 games in a row, especially at home. That'd be 2 home losses. Fireable offense. Now, here's what I will say about Ryan Day. And I'm not some Ryan Day supporter. I'm not some guy banging the table like Ryan Day, some superstar. Who would you hire? Like right now? Now, you can get people to come. Like, you could steal basically any coach except like Nick Saban. Obviously, Dabo doesn't make that much sense for you because he's a Southern guy, but like, and Kirby. Other than that, like, you obviously Harbaugh wouldn't come, but like, who are your options? You'd be like, Vrabel. Vrabel ain't leaving the NFL for fucking NIL and kissing 18-year-old's ass. The NFL is all about capitalism. You don't have to fake it and pretend and live in this giant fugazi. I pick you and I cut you. College is like, you got to play both sides. So you're not getting Mike Vrabel. Like, who are you getting? Mike Tomlin? No. Like, these are the names you're going to throw out because, like, who are your college options? Seriously, who are your college options? Dan Lanning? Kalen DuBois? Some of those type guys? Are they a lock to do better, beat Michigan? I don't know. Now, maybe your guys' standards are just like, we got to get better. I don't know. Have you checked out the season of Hard Knocks yet? I loved McDaniel before, but getting to see more of the real him around the team has made me love him even more. Just curious. I have not watched Hard Knocks. I want to watch in-season Hard Knocks. I want to watch the Barry Sanders documentary. I'm watching this. I don't know how I got into it. I mean, I didn't. She chose it. But this documentary, not a documentary, this show on Apple Plus. This girl who's like a scientist, is a cook. I forget the name. It's one of the trending shows on Apple Plus. I'm 2 episodes in. Not bad. Not bad. There's some limitations on what to watch. You know, the hard part is when you do this for a living. When I was a single guy, I just watched whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. So it's like all this football, all this sports. And then like, what do you want to watch in your free time? I'll just watch in-season Hard Knocks. She does like Mike McDaniel, calls him the funny guy. It's the name we call him in the house. it'd just be hard at night at like 9 o'clock. You kind of get in bed to relax. Be like, you want to watch in-season Hard Knocks, So it gets as you age, your sports consumption, even when you do this for a living, you don't get the full control Wednesday, Tuesday, and Friday night. Sometimes you gotta relent. That's words of advice to my youngins. Not even words of advice, just a word of reality. Why would Jalen Hurts be on the top of the MVP conversation and not Dak Prescott? Last year, all we heard about was Prescott throwing picks, and how he had regressed, and the talks of the Cowboys is beating up sub-500 teams. Last year, Hurts was dominating on a weak schedule and was in the MVP talk, and now again he's in the MVP talk and has 10 picks and is on track for 15. Can you make it make sense? Well, he has 11, 18, so he has 29 total touchdowns, and his team is 10-1. And they played you, and Dak was awesome, and Dak kind of fucked up. He just did. Took some bad sacks, stepped out of bounds, and that was kind of the difference in the game. We all watched it. And we saw Dak play the 49ers and get curb stomped. Now, Jalen plays bad against the Niners. Dak outplays him again against the Cowboys. We can have a new conversation. But like Dak, I'm sorry, you just don't get that much credit, destroying some of these teams. You just don't. When you lose the games that you have to win to like make it a no-brainer. I'm with you. Like Dak he's definitely alive for the most valuable player. He goes off Thursday Night Football against Seattle, with all of us watching, beats the Eagles the following week. I have no problem having the conversation. But you can't lose that game at home and, if Jalen has a couple touchdowns against you and he beats you, like, I'm sorry. It's not like here's the other thing. The Eagles defense is exactly the 85 Bears. Reggie White and Jerome Brown ain't walking through that door, even though their D-line is good. There's, their linebacking core is a problem right now. Their EPA, their estimated, yards per play, is not ideal right now. I'm not the biggest analytical breakdown guy on defense, but I saw some stats online that were like, yeah, you just watch them play. Their defense is not great. Is the Bears-Panthers trade potentially the worst trade in the history of Carolina? You trade up and get a quarterback who's certainly behind Stroud and maybe behind Richardson in terms of what you saw early in the season. You also trade a bona fide number 1, 2 second-round picks, worst of all, the number 1 overall pick. Hard to recall a trade that set a franchise behind in such a variety of ways. Here's the biggest kick in the balls. It's clearly you would have been just as shitty with most quarterbacks. So you could have just drafted someone at 9, been terrible with quarterback whoever, potentially got the number 1 pick and just got Caleb, who would have been the number 1 pick in last year's draft. So yeah, now these things change, right? A year ago, 2 months ago, Russell Wilson trade looked like the craziest trade of all time. It's still a massive, massive win for Seattle, and still one that Denver would do over if they could. The Houston Texans trade to the Browns, it's hard to not see them winning it overwhelmingly. This one, we got a ways to go. Bryce is, in a disastrous situation, but it looks pretty shitty. I was reading, maybe Albert Breer wrote an article about David Tepper. Like, think about this. If Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey is one of the best players on one of the best teams. He's a fucking superstar. They traded him for a second and a third, right? DJ Moore was part of this package. You had those 2 guys on your team. You did. Now, I got trading Christian, but listen, you do something at the time, I sold my house, man. I made a lot of money, $1 million. Well, if 2 years later, that $1 million house is worth $4 million, you might have a regret on that one. You don't think the Panthers would want Christian McCaffrey over what's his name from Penn State? You don't think they want DJ Moore back? I said at the time, you're not extending these defensive linemen, especially Brian Burns. Why didn't you just give them Brian Burns and keep DJ Moore for your young quarterback? You got the defensive tackle, draft some more pass rushers, sign a pass rusher. I think that's one they'd like back. If you could redo that trade, You would keep DJ Moore, who's under contract, and trade Brian Burns. And maybe you wouldn't have to trade as much. You're like, I'm trading you a premium pass rusher who you're going to pay. It actually would have been a win-win for everybody. Obviously, DJ Moore's a really good player in the Bears, but maybe they wouldn't have to do the sweat deal. They could, I don't know. I think it was all off. But yeah, I think the Carolina Panthers trade is easily, right as we sit here right now, looks like one of the worst deals of all time. Now, the world's fluid, just like trades. Things age better, things age poorly. We'll have to see. I would probably bet, I don't know if this will age as bad as it looks right now. I have a hard time ever saying, like, oh, win-win. You know, like when the Vikings traded Diggs to the Buffalo Bills and then they drafted Justin Jefferson. It's like, win-win. Like one of the rares, like, oh, love this trade. Bills are happy. They got a sweet player. Vikings are happy. They got a superstar. Just like it just worked out. Does not feel like that has any chance of happening with this. So worst trade in Carolina Panthers history. I don't have the wiki up of all their trades. Feels like it'd be up there, though. Definitely. Appreciate everyone listening. Adios.